Hey everybody, welcome back from spring break. I hope you're all doing well and feeling healthy and staying safe. Here is our document we have this week. Appreciating Poetry is the weekly assignment here. It's the last week of our poetry unit. So Monday, the first assignment here is a review of all the stuff we've been doing with poetry, all the poetic elements and forms and structures we've studied over the last couple of weeks. So there's some review there for you. On Tuesday, we're going to read our last poem, a poem called A Valentine for Earnest Man by Naomi Shahib Nye. It's on Common Lit. This poem, as you'll see, is sort of a poem about writing poetry, which is what you guys will be doing on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, which is kind of what I'm here to talk about, that you'll be writing your own poem, okay? So just as a helpful refresher here, if you need it or if you want to see examples, I've got a big list here of all the activities we've done the last couple of weeks, all the different poetic elements and techniques we've studied, all the different poems we've read to show examples of poets using those techniques. So if you want to go back and look through these, as a sort of example for things you might do as a way to spark ideas, go ahead and go back through those, okay? Your actual task here for writing your poem is to kind of take up the call in Naomi Shahib Nye's poem and to take a look around your world, whether that's just your house or walking around your neighborhood, wherever it may be, and try to find something that you think is overlooked or that people don't take time to stop and appreciate, okay? So that's kind of the task to get your mind going here for your poem that you're going to write this week. Okay. You're going to click on this link here and you're going to make a copy of a form that has your activity for both Wednesday, writing your poem, and for Thursday, which is completing a TPCast on the poem you wrote. So you guys have done TPCasts on other people's poems. After you write your own poem, you're going to complete a TPCast on your poem to kind of talk us through a lot of the artistic decisions you made or creative decisions you made in your poem, and some of the different poetic techniques or elements you tried to incorporate into your poem. Okay. Let's real quick take a look at the rubric just so we're all on the same page with how this thing is going to be graded. So if you click here on this link, it'll ask you to make a copy here of the TPCast rubric. There's just three parts to it here. The TPCast response. You want to make sure your answers in the TPCast are thorough, that you're actually giving detailed evidence from your poem to kind of back up your ideas. You want to make sure your answers are accurate and precise. What I mean by that is when you're talking about different types of figurative language or the tone of your poem or when something shifts, that you are using some of those poetic terms you've been learning all unit, that you're using them correctly. All right. The last part here is conventions in writing. This is not going to be part of the poem. We're not going to be looking for correct punctuation or capitalization in a poem, right? It's not a paragraph. It doesn't have the same rules necessarily. You can make creative or artistic decisions with your punctuation or your capitalization. But when you're completing your TPCast, we do want you to be using complete sentences, proper punctuation, capitalization, and conventions. So be careful about that. Proofread your work on your TPCast. All right. Down here below is just a place for us to give you feedback on your poem. Okay. So we will use this to give you feedback on your poem that you write later this week. So if we go back up here, let's take a look at this last part of your work on Wednesday, which is the requirements and some ideas to get you brainstorming for your poem. Okay. Basically, you need to have everything in your poem that will allow you to complete an actual thorough TPCast. Okay, so there's not necessarily a length requirement. You're going to have, more than a haiku of 3 lines to like really deeply analyze it, probably, unless it is like a crazy good haiku. But the real thing is here, you want to just try to give an honest shot at fulfilling this prompt. And a place to get started here is just thinking about some of these sort of brainstorming questions. So, what do you want your poem to be about? What message do you want to send? Might be a place to start. Think about the idea you're trying to communicate and what you could do to kind of subtly build a poem around that. Is there a specific emotion or mood or tone you want to use? What words could you use to kind of drop those seeds in your poem that will kind of establish that mood or that tone? What kind of figurative language do you want to use? Do you want to emphasize metaphors and similes? Do you want to be heavy on personification? Do you want to use a blend of everything? What twist or shift or change or turn are you going to have in your poem? We're going to have that for the TPcast. So kind of plan ahead a little bit for when something is going to alter or shift. All right. And then the last thing to think about is probably your title. I would wait till you're kind of at least done with the draft of your poem before you think about your title, because you want it to be something that adds meaning to the poem. So be thoughtful about the title of your poem. Don't just title it My Poem. Okay, like stop and think about what will add some meaning when people are done reading the poem. There's Franny, who this poem is about. Good transition, Franny. Let's go there. So I wrote my poem, my example here that I'm going to kind of show you to guide you through your work here is called Frantic Franimal. It is about my dog, Franny, who you just heard barking, because that's what she does. She's half Chihuahua and she hates everything that moves outside of our house. So uh, I wrote this poem here. We're going to go through this poem about Franny and about an element of her personality that maybe I appreciate that other people might not care for quite as much. And then we're going to go through the TP cast on the poem. Okay, just as again as an example to show you, what your work might look like to kind of get some ideas rolling for you. Okay, so let's read through my poem here first, and then we can go through the TP cast. So, Frantic Franimal, here is the title. The whirring wheels worry my Chihuahua while we slowly stroll our everyday way. Rage riles at conking cars that putt-putt past, but bitterness is best barked at bicyclists who speed through our tennis shoe rendezvous like she chews into sinews of barbecue. So Franny pulls and scowls, mouth full of growls. I hesitate to relate her hate for skates. This demon dog does, however, resolve to turn angel with snacks and blankets involved. Such mutation must surely demonstrate that our surroundings decidedly dictate how we behave, what we communicate, so anticipate what will agitate and appreciate what exhilarates. There it is. All right. So we're going to go through the TP cast here and kind of talk through some of my thinking and my process as I went through writing this poem and what I was trying to do in there. Okay. So first T here is for title. And because we're kind of doing this about your own poem, some of the prompts you'll notice are a little bit different. So consider your title, make a prediction on what readers will think your poem is about when they see the title. If you do not know me or have never heard me talk about my dog in class, you may not take away much from this title. Maybe you just notice the word frantic. That might set a certain mood. And then franimal, you might notice animal in there and think about something with nature. I don't know, maybe you just think this is weird nonsense. You may not know anything about it. But yeah, I think at least frantic would kind of demonstrate a certain kind of emotional message before they even start reading the poem. The P here is for paraphrase. So you can just copy and paste your original poem that you wrote, just like I did here on the left. And on the right, just translate your poem kind of into literal plain English if you used any figurative language or any kind of clever wordplay or symbolism. Kind of spell that out more clearly here in the paraphrasing. For the connotation section of TPCast, there's a couple different parts to think about. Imagery, what are you doing to help the reader kind of picture the setting or the place or the person or something in your poem? What are you doing there to help them imagine or picture something with imagery? Try to give a specific example from your poem and talk about what the imagery adds to the poem. For figurative language, point out any moments where you used a metaphor, simile, hyperbole, personification, onomatopoeia, any other figurative language you may want to use, and talk about the meaning that that figurative language adds. I really only had one in here. I just had this one simile. I was more heavy on sound elements because that was kind of the fun part for me, is figuring out how I could combine all these different sounds together in a way that still made sense and told a story of some kind. So I used alliteration, assonance, and consonants, and I've kind of highlighted a little bit of the poem here to kind of demonstrate that. Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds, so not vowels, consonants, at the beginning of words. So the W sound here with the W would be a good example of alliteration here right at the start of the poem. The whirring wheels worry my chihuahua while we slowly stroll our everyday way. Ooh, there's another W there. I totally forgot about. Boom. All right, so you can see here after repeating that W sound at the beginning of words, you can even get a little tricky, and I'm making the W sound with the H here in Chihuahua. So it's not necessarily always the same letter, it's just the same sound being repeated. So that's alliteration. Assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds. So here I've highlighted that with slowly stroll. It's got that O sound repeated. And then again down here, who speeds through our tennis shoe rendezvous like she chews and toos and use of barbecue. It's got that oo sound over and over again there. So that would be an example of assonance. Consonance is the repetition of a consonant sound in the middle of a word, not at the beginning, which would be alliteration. So it's kind of thinking about the location of the repeated sound is a little bit different. So here it says like kind of a iffy example of that, but I was trying to do it. So Franny pulls and scowls, mouth full of growls. You've got some rhyme there with pull and full and scowl and growl, but they've all got that L sound in there in this line. So you've got that repeated L sound throughout that line, which is a fun sound element. So you can have some fun tinkering around with that, seeing where you can add some of those sound elements in your poem. Connotation, just stop and pick out a few words here where you thought you used a particularly clever word choice or meaningful word choice to kind of add something to your poem. Okay, I talked about how I used angel and demon here at the end of the poem because those are words that we associate with good and evil and have all sorts of heavy connotations, whether it's religious or moral or whatever else it may be. Um, the A here is attitude or tone. So try to think of a few adjectives to describe the tone that you are using in the poem. And then think about what examples or what parts of the poem show that tone or demonstrate that tone, and try to be as specific as possible so everyone can kind of clearly see what you're trying to do. Shift, this is where you pinpoint the moment where something shifts or changes. There may be more than one shift in your poem. That's awesome if there is. Just try to pick one or two to focus on if you've got a bunch, and really write about why you included that shift. What does it add? What does it change about the meaning? Kind of why is that an important moment in the poem? The second title here for TPCAST, look back at the title here now that you've kind of read the poem. You wrote the poem, so you've read it a bunch of times, but kind of think about after reading this poem a few times, what do you think people should take away from seeing the title again once they sort of have understood the poem? I'm hoping here that people understand that this is about my dog. I mentioned her name here, Franny, so I'm hoping there's a connection there. And that this is me just again being kind of alliterative in my title with the FR sound. And also, Franimal is like kind of one of my just pet names for my dog. The last T here is for theme. So this is where you would write something about the theme or message you're trying to express to people through your poem. People may take away a different theme, and sometimes that's the fun thing about creating poems or really any kind of art. But we do want you to think about what theme you are trying to at least express personally. So my poem here at the end is kind of really where I try to emphasize the theme, I guess I would say. Just looking at how Franny is a very, I guess, agitated, yappy, some people would say irritating dog when she sees a bike or sees a skateboarder, and how when she comes back inside and she feels safe and isn't scared or insecure, all of a sudden she is, wanting to cuddle or wanting to play, and she's a total sweetheart. So just thinking about how our surroundings or how our environment can affect our behavior, our personality, or bring out different parts of our personality, and how we should probably anticipate or think ahead about some things that often bring out the worst in us and kind of have a plan for when those things might happen. And then the flip side of that coin is taking some time to appreciate the things, the people that bring out the best sides of us. So that was kind of the theme I was going for here at the end of the poem. Um, and it's kind of a weird transition from talking about my dog, but that's where my poem took me. And I hope you have fun writing yours and it takes you in an interesting direction. If you have any questions or need any help with anything, I'll be available via Remind or email, or you can message me on Canvas. And we'll have live class and office hours on Wednesday. It won't be a live lesson, but it will be like a Q&A session. So if you want to talk through some ideas you have for your poem, or if you're having any struggles with any of the work this week, that'd be a time when you could talk that through with myself and some of your other classmates. Hope to see you guys then. I will hope to see you in person sometime soon. I miss you guys and I hope you're all doing well. Have a great week.